What's up, everyone? Moss over here with Grand Melons Gaming, and today I want to talk about Cash In. It's a rather interesting card from Crucible War because currently, right now, you can draw two cards and go again, but there's only one way to make copper, four of it, to cheat it out for free. Warrior class. And Legend Story Studios claims that Monarch's going to be a game changer, but in my honest opinion, the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you bring diversification to all the classes, not just war. Which is why I think all the classes are going to have access to copper, silver, and gold, which will bring cash into them. And I believe that is a very good way. Now, cash in, it's very good, for example, when you get clapbacks and you gotta block some cards, but you need to generate some resources. So if you want to put off a decent attack, basically you want cash in because it goes +1 and replaces cash in plus an extra card in your hand, and against go again. So that's really good, especially in Roomblade. Like, oh, I get hit by something nasty, and I'm like, I gotta block some of that. But then I got cash in, and I got copper or gold or silver on the board. And I'm like, well, I could definitely see if I can draw in some nasty attack combos, then fill my hand at the end of the turn so that I can block again. Hopefully, I draw into more cash in or cards that set me up for a cash in further down the road. But Brutes will love this because they got cards that require you to randomly discard a card, and they got powerful attacks. This will help them, definitely. But also, Warrior, if they get access, they're more than likely going to get access to gold and silver wares to make stuff. But also, other classes. Ninja already has card draw effects. Not only that, I believe this is also going to really very much boost Tomb of Fandel, simply because if you put it in the arsenal and play it, you gain a life for each card in your hand. This can combo well with Tomb of Fandel, and particularly for those combo builds. Or you can use Mage Master Boots on Tomb of Fandel to go for a burst turn. I mean, a Storm Flurry or whatever. Wizards would love this because if they want to chain multiple attacks, they need more resources to pitch so they can pay the cost. Um, I would have to say that. And also, you may have noticed the Mecha Doll for the Mechology class for that's specific for Blitz. I think that for intelligence was delivery on purpose simply because they knew what was coming down the pipeline for the Monarch set and beyond. And this is definitely going to change the way other Blitz heroes work, for example. But anyway, I'd like to go into detail with each class, scenarios, and what I can do. So we're going to get started with my favorite class, Roomblade. Let's talk about Roomblade cards. Now, there is a lot. We got a bunch of stuff that gets reduced by rune chants built into them, or we can give it to cards via the Blood Sheaf Skeleton. Skeleton affects Slogism. It can force through a Rattlebones right before, because typically you want to play Arknight Ascendancy, and the Skeleton would affect that, not the Rattlebones. But anyway, Rattlebones is very good in this deck, but here's the various combos you can do it, particularly in a mid-range build where you're building up rune chants. Here's what it's going to be like. Oh, I'm going to take some clapback. Oh, wait, I get cash back and resources like 2 silver or a single gold or 4 copper. And I'm like, let's see if I can cash in and get a brutal attack off. And if you draw the right cards, you can definitely do some damage. Clap them back, make them think twice. So let's see. You're going to place Crack the Blood Chief Skeleton. Well, you either play Mordred Tide or you crack the Blood Chief Skeleton afterwards. Then you play Slogism, which you don't have to pay resources. Then you play Arknight Ascendancy. And perhaps you have a Rattlebones in hand that you didn't have to use the block. Maybe you didn't, but the Arknight Ascendancy is still going to hit like a freight train, and it's going to create a lot of rune chance depending on what Slogism you use. Red one grants 6 power, and the Arknight Ascendancy has Dominate, which means you can only use 1 card. It's going to create a decent amount. So the highest value I've seen is like 3, and so on average, you're creating 9 or more rune chance simply because of Mordred Tide. Now, there's also various other builds. For example, you can take some damage and say, I want to cash in and I want to see if I can get a multiple attack turn with the various low cost cards that we have at our disposal. Whether it's like meet and greets. I mean, there's a lot you can do. Like Modern Skies into a Consuming Volition, then you play Amplify the Arknights right after you get a hit from the Modern Sky to make it free, and then you play Pummel on top of it. I mean, that's a brutal turn because if the Consuming Volition and Pummels get their target, they're going to be discarding 2 cards. You're forcing them to do something about this because they're going to be low in hand size to try to launch an effective attack. I mean, not only that, I'm like, you can also take some damage and go for a brutal turn to where you use Mage Master Boots, Rune-Blood Barrier, Arknight Ascendancy with Arknight Ascendancy, and perhaps with Slogism. Perhaps you set up your hand right, and I'm like, you stack it, take some damage. I'm like, I'm gonna go for a big turn, and I'm like, there's a lot you can do with Roomblade. But anyway, we're going to talk about the Brute class and the various cards that require randomly discard a card. But we're going to talk Brute next. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. Brute, it's going to need a lot more help than just cash in after looking at it. My honest opinion, it needs ways to make copper, silver, and gold, and cash in. Plus, it's definitely gonna need access to probably a majestic that costs 1 or 2 resources and attacks for 6 or more, and that it draws 2 cards. It might have an effect to where you randomly discard a card, but you draw 2 regardless of what you discard. And I'm like, it definitely needs that because I'm looking at this list that I wrote down, and a lot of the card draw effects Brute have right now is very conditional under the circumstances. Skullhorn, it's, well, let's destroy it, draw a card, randomly discard, go again, and I'm like, ugh. Savage Feast, you gotta discard a 6 attack while you're attacking with it, and hopefully you can draw a card and sink below. It's defensive filtering. Beast Within, it's gotta be discarded. Part of one of those random discards to get a trigger on it. You lose life if you don't draw into it. And it repeats itself until you find yourself 6 or power card. Blood Rush Bellow, it's conditional. It requires a random discard, but you can draw 2 cards off it and gives your brute attacks +2. But you gotta discard a 6. And if your hand's got clunky stuff like Springboard, Somersault, or Tome of Vandal, it's like not very ideal. Because you might have times where your hand's very clunky with that kind of stuff. Very situational. But if it goes off, it goes off. But Tome of Fandel, like I said, gains your life if you played it from the arsenal. But There, you need action points beyond it to be able to get an attack off the following turn. The same turn, I mean. Then stand sketch plan. Very situational. If you don't discard a sixer power um, out of your hand, you used up your only action point or whatever it's coming off a lead to charge or something like that. And I'm like, nah, that's not ideal for trying to get oh, let's go tutor, randomly discard. If the thing ain't 6 power that you discarded, you've used up an action point. Each action point's vital. But overall, that's what I think about Brute. Um, it definitely needs something with 6 or more power that costs 2 or less. Definitely not free, because simply because of how many discard effects I'm seeing right now. I mean, you got Consuming Volition, Pommel, and who knows how much more discard effects are going to come in the meta in the nearby future. No idea, but we need some way to mitigate that while continuously being able to apply pressure and be able to race opponents effectively. Brute's like one of those classes where sometimes you can get multiple attacks off, but you need to at the very least get off one or more attack off per turn. Hopefully. And then get to the point where you take a decent hit, but you set up this savage, intimidate, alpha rampage mode to where you are donking them like boom, just like that. That's the ideal situation. Preserve your life, so keep on racing and get them in a position to where, well, let's take a hit and I want to use my full hand to go alpha rampage donk. Anyway, I'm going to come out with a part 2 video for the go again classes. That's going to be, for example, warrior, ninja, and anyway, look forward to it. Moss over out with Grand Rounds Gaming.